Welcome to Three. You've got Gill Gross, Joel Drucker, and Amy Lundy. So many interesting things to get into this week. Starting with an unbelievable amount of coach, player, team news, and we're going to run through all of it. We'll take a quick look at Washington, D.C., which players are most interesting to us in these draws, and then also U.S. Open mixed doubles as we get closer and closer to that. The buzz is beginning to grow. We have teams, and we want to take a look at what's in store for us the week before the U.S. Open. But beginning with coach player news, and we've got Holger to cover, we've got Alexander Zverev, we've got Jannik Sinner, but let's start with Stefanos Tsitsipas. And the news broke yesterday via Stefanos's Instagram that the partnership between him and Goran is over. And we do not know why, but we know it's over, and we know the interviews that Goran gave a couple of weeks ago, midway through Wimbledon after Tsitsipas's exit via retirement. And let's rewind and start there, because Joel and Amy, I haven't heard your opinions on this. Joel, what did you think of what Goran had to say and his decision to say it?
Well, that was the big thing, is his decision to even say it. I mean, he's had some very publicly critical comments of his client. And if I was a player, I would say to the coach, hey, we're working together. Your job is not to publicly throw me under the bus. If you have a problem with the way I do something, talk to me and do it. And that Goran would do that, I'd like to say I can't believe it. But again, Goran Ivanic, I said I can believe it because he's been known for always kind of speaking his mind and being clear and kind of expressive back to the days when he used to joke about being the good Goran and the bad Goran and all this stuff. But I think that was just I just can't believe that. And of course, it's kind of the ex-great player can do those things sometimes publicly as a coach in a way that the person who wasn't a great player has to always be buttoned up and loyal. And if I was Tsitsipas, I would say to him, "Excuse me," and I would do it though as close to in person as I could, rather than do it during texting and all that other stuff. But it was strange, and of course, then now it's over.
Tsitsipas is a sensitive soul. We know that a little bit, and that had to hurt, honestly. And with Ivan Isavic, he did something similar when he had that very brief coaching relationship with Rybakina. So it's kind of like fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. In the words of George W. Bush, you're not going to fool me again. So there's a trend there. But, just in terms of like what Goran might have offered Tsitsipas, I recently was privy to some of the things that Tsitsipas has been working on the court. And Goran, of course, known for his serve, and Tsitsipas has had issues with his serve, and people, have talked about his technique and how he falls to one side, et cetera, et cetera. But everybody's been in agreement that it's a fairly effective weapon in his game. So as long as it's working for him, maybe don't mess with it too much. But in this training blocks that he's been working on while all the coaching changes have been happening, he's been working very specifically on backhand return and backhand ground stroke coming over the ball, not slice. I mean, you would think, wow, he'd really be, if he's doing training blocks, he would really be trying to develop a slice. But no, coming over the ball and very specifically recovery footwork for the one-handed backhand, just what to do with it. He's an incredible athlete, even with the injuries and the hurt back. But you can see that the backhand is very much a concern. And I think it speaks to what's going on tour right now. The pace is increasing. Alcaraz and Sinner, you've got to come up with solutions. They're targeting his backhand, and he really is at a point where he's looking for solutions.
He's quite obsessed with the pace and the spin And and this is from his public comments and things that I've discerned, even from talking to people around him. Like, he feels like the disadvantage of weight of shot when he plays Alcaraz and Sinner is a big problem, and it's something that he's tried to remedy. And he went to the different racket. But what Goran's point was is, I could have helped you with the backhand slice. We could have worked on that technical stuff. Goran's point was, I can't do that unless you get in shape, and I can't do that until you fix your back. So don't play tennis. Like, Goran's instruction was, stop playing tennis, fix your back, and then we can work. Then we can play tennis. But until your back is fixed, stop. Don't play. And I think that's a fair point.
That is a fair point. I think though going public with it was I think that would be unacceptable if I was a
Right.
player.
And again, to be clear, we don't know, because another thing I found interesting is Tsitsipas gave an interview about Goran before Wimbledon. And one of the first things he said was, he's very, very tough, very, very honest. And I need that. So we can all, I think it's safe to assume, Goran wasn't saying anything publicly that he wasn't telling Stefanos privately. It's almost like a football coach that you see sometimes will go to the media to put pressure on their players and to fire them up, to almost embarrass them a little bit, and to say, to attack an individual or to attack a certain unit. And it almost brings that level of, I'm putting pressure on you to another level when you go public.
And in the team sports, the coach is the boss. And in the individual sport, the coach is the service provider, of which the player is the client. And it's a whole, we're going to be seeing in the next 5 years, between the growth of teams, between the on-court, mid-match coaching, a lot of ways this stuff is going to evolve. Different ways. We're going to see players soon who eventually will have had mid-match coaching their entire life, and how that shapes their learning process and all that. There's going to be a very good 16-year-old who's going to have like a three-person team on his and all that, and how that's all evolving. And I wrote this recently about how the center of power on the team is not necessarily the tennis expert. I mean, I thought that years ago with Federer. I thought when he was working with Lubitsch, Lubitsch wasn't the head coach. The most important guy was Paganini, the physio guy, I thought, on that team. And these teams are evolving, and there's jockeying within them. The ex player who's the coach has a stake in his way of how he or she wants to do things. But there might be the psychologist or the best friend or the philosophy teacher. And I'm not, that's not a joke. I mean,
No, no, I agree with that. And along those lines, I'll be the one to go out there and say it, sure. He's Tsitsipas is going through a breakup, and that can affect the team dynamic. And breakups are hard. They can occupy a lot of the headspace. So yeah, it's a lot of turmoil for a very talented player.
I think there's an opportunity to create what I would call tennis team management, like someone who could teach players, okay, so now you're let's say you're 17 or you're 18, 19, you're about to head out there on the tour. How do you manage this team? Because now it's not just you're working with your parent or one coach. You got the whole team. You got a team. You're kind of a
It's kind,
CEO.
it's kind of the agent's job.
No, that not to manage how they actually do the interaction, not the interactions with the actual player. The agent's job is to tell them how to talk with a guy during the Tuesday morning training block. The agent
Yeah,
manages
that's
the
true.
business affairs. The agent manages the business affairs of, like, okay, here's what we'll pay the physio, and here's what we do this, and here's your contract, and here's your hotel. But when they head out to do their workout or whatever their stuff is Tuesday morning, I mean, whether it's the weight room and then the kettlebells and the little soccer balls,
Yeah, I think it probably differs based on player to player, but
right?
I do think there are agents who will say, is the physio working? Is everything good? Are
Right.
you feeling happy? And then if the answer is no, okay, here are some options. But I think, going back to Tsitsipas, this whole thing is just discouraging and disappointing, because since splitting with Apostolos as head coach, there hasn't really been any long-term meaningful partnership that they could really build on or develop through. And I think the plan now is to go back to Apostolos, and this entire period of time where he's been, I'm going to put in quotation marks, out of the picture, because I don't think he's ever truly out of the picture. Uh, it hasn't been fruitful. And I was just thinking, look, at this point in Tsitsipas's career, this Goran thing really has to work. And the fact that it really, really hasn't, I just think my confidence level in what's to come is not high, because I really did feel like this had to work. Am I overreacting?
I don't know if you're overreacting as much as I see why you thought it had to work, and he's going to be 27 in next month. Uh, I think it's kind of like we were hoping it would have worked because Goran has a track record and Tsitsipas has had results. It'd be nice to put him back on the track, but okay, so it didn't. And so now what? Does Boris Becker? I don't know. Who does he contact? Who's
I think it's back to dad.
well, that's a common thing. That's the common thing. And what does the player say? Nobody knows me better. Nobody knows me better than my dad. Going back home. Going back. I'm moving in with my parents. You know?
Yeah, well, there are obviously a lot of downsides and limitations that we've seen in that dynamic. It's rough times. Hopefully, he can turn somewhat of a corner at some point, get healthy, get in shape. Let's move on to Alexander Zverev. It's been well, first of all, after Wimbledon, he gives a dark press conference where he talks about not enjoying himself on the tour. He opens up about mental health struggles like he never has before. But obviously, he had some extra time here before this North American hardcourt swing. He goes to Mallorca to the Rafa Nadal Academy, and he puts in a training block with Toni Nadal. It is not a permanent thing. They will not, Toni will not continue to coach him on a regular basis. But Toni also says, basically, come to the academy whenever you want, open invitation. I thought it was really positive to see this, Amy.
It's not uncommon, Gil, for players to work with high profile coaches for a short training block. I think Tony's style and what he brings to the table, the well-documented discipline and approach that he brings to the table, is really good for Zverev. But that's another guy who could really use a psychologist, a traveling maybe psychologist, or do some work in therapy, especially if mental is what you're really struggling with and you're telling the world that. Kind of reminds me of Naomi Osaka when, she first told everyone that she was really struggling mentally. And then a year or two later, she said, I finally broke down and got a therapist. It's like, Naomi, you're the one who brought this to the forefront, and it took you, all these months to then actually seek professional help. I think, that would be if I were managing his team, that would be the first place that I go. But certainly Tony Nadal can't hurt.
I'd love to hear what Tony shared with Sasha because we know Tony is direct and says what he really thinks about things. And Zverev has been kind of the about a 180 from Rafa in the competitive comportment mode. And yet so good and so skilled and won plenty of tournaments.
I would say though, he's a battler.
Oh, I'm not saying he doesn't compete. I just mean his processing of competition. It's interesting. I was talking to Wayne Bryan the other day about his boys being inducted to Hall of Fame, and he's talking about the way you manage your energy in between points. The way you manage your energy on changeovers and how that propels you into the next point. Yeah, I mean, look, it's very as high as two, three, right? I mean,
Too.
plenty of titles, plenty of results, and yet he kind of haunts himself at times. He makes him see he's his own worst critic at times, and he kind of gets into that place. And how do you stay in the place. I mean, it's not that Rafa was happy-go-lucky and smiling and throwing bouquets when he was playing, as much as he was just had this, okay, to the next point, to the next point.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I agree with Amy that you can go see whatever tennis expert you want to go see and train with, and at the end of the day, it's a little more. I mean, I said this after Australia. It's not really about the tennis. Not that things can't get better in Sasha Zverev's game at 27 years old. Of course they can, but he's also 27. A lot of the developing has already happened, and now it's about bringing your best self when it counts. And the question is, I guess the debate would be, can a tennis coach help with that, or does it need to be somebody whose line of focus and emphasis is on purely psychological? Because one thing that I was just happy to see Zverev do something and kind of tinkering and doing something different and fresh, because maybe it is as simple as somebody like Toni providing him with some confidence and some extra energy.
It gets to the emotional makeup of the player and some of the choices they want. And this is what's going to be interesting to see how this coaching dynamic evolves, the team dynamic. In the other sports, we're kind of clear this is what the offensive coordinator does, and this is what they have these roles. But what is that role? It could be the psychologist, could be someone like we know, like a Jeff Greenwald, or a person who gives you insights into performance and your mind. And it could also be someone who says, all right, we're just going to get more fit. You know what I mean? Because maybe that's what's hurting you, and we're gonna train hard, and there isn't really an answer. It's kind of up to the player to believe in it. And sometimes I wonder about Sasha, not to overtripe the concept of belief, but there's this way that I think you're all right. Be positive. That's your metric. It's a little bit like Sabalenka. A little like Sabalenka does that. It's like, why are you riding this wave of emotion? Just be good to yourself, start to finish. And how do you learn to do that? Does psychologists teach you that? Does a fitness teacher teach you that? Who does?
All right, how about Holger Rune? Just a 3-day stint with Andre Agassi, very flashy. The headlines are big, and it's Andre Agassi. It's a massive, massive name. But I guess the question here is, what can 3 days really do? 3 days with Andre, maybe a lot. I'm posing a question.
Is that a movie?
It's crazy to me because when Andre Agassi worked with Novak Djokovic for a short stint of time, it didn't seem to get as much attention as this. It's probably just social media, and whoever took that video of Andre looking pensive and all that, it's like cinematic, and it just made for like great video. But I'm glad that Andre is finally getting his due in terms of not just the player he was, but the person he is. Maybe some of it has to do with the fact that he's done some work in broadcasting and in booth, and we're getting these bon mots that we can parse and discuss. And he went on Andy Roddick's podcast, and that was just phenomenal interview. So Andre is finally getting the elevation that he deserves as a person, but also potentially as a coach. And again, this kind of thing is not uncommon, but it can't do anything but help Holger.
Um, I just want to push a little bit. I think Andre's gotten plenty of dues. He's gotten plenty of praise, plenty of public recognition and appreciation. It's just that he exiled himself for a few years, and now I think you made a great point, Amy. Maybe him being more visible on TV, and the Roddick podcast, which I agree was great. And so now it's like, okay, here we are, Andre, and now possibly into the coaching realm. But 3 days, I mean, 3 days might as well be 2 hours. Or let's go 3 weeks, but 3 days, and it's during a tournament too, right? So it's not like they went off to some,
Before.
okay, it was before. But I think I'm intrigued. He's had incredible hearing Agassi talk about the guys he played with, and his understanding of the game at the pro level is fantastic. Now the question then becomes for Rune, I don't know what more can come or what can that be or
No,
It's
that's a good point, Joel. I'm totally sold on Andre being basically a tennis genius wizard because like not all former pros, not all former great pros, all-time greats seem to be such deep thinkers about the game, right? There's a range there, right? Some are super, super deep thinkers and some aren't. And that
well,
it
they
can
don't
be
articulate it. They may think it, they may have it, but they don't
it's
really
there, it's instinctive. They feel the game, but can they communicate the game,
exactly.
right? Andre can communicate the game. Like that's been very, very clear from what we've gotten. And then the thing that I think about, I know that sometimes the stuff, first, I think he's very technical, and Holger needs help with his return of serve. And he did mention that they looked at that. They talked about, okay, what should Holger be looking for, looking at? And I wonder if there are some small details that can move the needle on that just a little bit because Rune among top 50 players in the last 52 weeks is 23rd in break rate. So he's basically bang average, which is much better than it was if we were having this conversation about a year ago. Um, there have been improvements. Then if you look at return in play numbers, way, 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 way down. So he doesn't make a lot of returns. He wins a lot of rallies, which is why he's not awful in terms of winning return points. But it does feel like the biggest easy way that he can improve his results is to improve his return of serve. If there's one shot.
I have a quick little anecdote that I don't know that has ever been told before, but when Andre was working with Novak for that short period of time, Andre became convinced that Novak should experiment with a racket change. So he showed up at practice with a half a dozen unmarked black rackets and convinced Novak for a short period of time to experiment with, some different weights, some different sticks. And Novak ultimately didn't like it at all. Went back to his old racket and said, "Bye, Andre." But my point here is just that as much as we view him as a wizard and a genius, he's also human, and he doesn't have all the answers. But again, I when during that stint, maybe because of the exile you mentioned, Joel, he was not, people weren't celebrating that as much as they are anytime Andre shows up now. Oh, let's listen to exactly what the guy says and really like celebrating who he is.
The power of media. Yeah, I mean, he kind of doing the work at Roland Garros for TNT this year, and then he was also he was president at Wimbledon in ways. I think that's kind of like vaulted him. Yet he is in it now. He's been doing stuff for the last couple of years, doing different gigs and things like that. So now it's like Andre is officially in the tennis universe. And yeah, he does have a tremendous mind about how he sees the game, and I don't know, interesting how players relate to him. Oh, I know what it was I was thinking. The return of serve. The return of serve is worth a lot of inquiry and study about. We've seen things with the changing of where players receive and moving closer and moving back and the swing. And I bet you Agassi's going to have a lot of thoughts. I mean, he was more of a return than a serve guy, and how the philosophy of that is, and what we've learned from Novak's great return over the years. I think that's a really worthwhile topic at all levels, at all levels of the game, because I think the serve too, but the serve is like, okay, yeah, we know you start the delivery technique. I think that the technique of the return is worthy of some deeper exploration.
It's a tricky one, right? What are we doing with our timing? What are we doing with our stance? What are we doing with our grips? Um,
Surface is like
And
huge.
and
you
where do
have
we?
no time. You have no time on. That's the big difference between the serve and the return. The serve, you can do you can do a lot of different things, and you have, I guess, the freedom. I want to say to execute certain things technically. With the return, it's it's the most rushed shot in tennis. So that doesn't make it less technical, but it takes away the options. And everything just needs to be airtight. Like any wasted inefficiency in technique is just going to be an absolute disaster on the return of serve.
Right. And so where you stand also based on your model of the game. I mean, just to cite this, for example, when like Gil, when we played, we know, I'm from the stand-in era and you're a little more, you have longer swings, so you stand back. And
Yeah.
and each has its place in the game, but as players build styles in the pros, it's more closer standing back and using the racket head speed, but it's many different things. I mean, I don't know, it's just a fascinating topic that's technical and tactical.
By the way, on Andre, last thing, I've heard multiple sources say that his book, which is one of the greatest of all time, Open, is going to be made into a movie. And I don't know why that hasn't been formally announced yet because I've been hearing this for a year, but it's something to look out for.
Okay. Fun.
Yeah. So I think the Agassi mania might just continue to increase in decibel level.
Hmm.
Maybe we'll have to at some point down the road talk, take a look at what Andre portfolio of things is now and maybe chat about him a little more in depth.
All right, the last item on the coach team news is Yannick Sinner rehiring Umberto Ferrara, who was his the trainer who purchased the spray that he ended up using on the physio who gave Yannick a massage, which resulted in the contamination that resulted in Sinner testing positive twice. Um, he was fired right before the U.S. Open, shortly after the news broke of the ITIA no fault or negligence, no suspension ruling at the time. This was before the WADA appeal. Now, before Roland Garros, Sinner parted ways with Marco Panici, who is a former Novak Djokovic trainer. And the reason for that is widely reported to be that Panici gave an unauthorized interview with an Italian uh, media source, and Yannick did not like that. And that cost him his job. So if we have any lessons from the show,
Stay away from the media, everybody. We're evil.
we will,
We'll
we
just
will,
ruin you.
exactly. So yeah, I mean, that was a storyline coming into Wimbledon that Sinner's physical team was out. Obviously, Sinner wins Wimbledon, and now he rehires Umberto Ferrara. Uh, my my read on this, first of all, I'm surprised. I just think there are a lot of people who are very, very competent. So it would feel to me that if there's one option out there that is going to absolutely be a PR hit, do you really have to hire that guy given all the choices? That said, Yannick Sinner did not immediately fire Ferrara when he learned of the contamination that was, again, their fault, meaning that Yannick immediately forgave them and was not like, it was not something that completely eroded the trust between Yannick and Ferrara and Naldi. So what we had before the U.S. Open, that was a PR move. That was somebody I need to just show some accountability. Obviously, the ITIA is holding me not accountable. That's the ruling. Okay, I'm not commenting on that. Our thoughts on that are well known, but the ruling was Yannick, you are not accountable. Yannick then took it upon himself to say, okay, here's how I'm accountable. I will fire these people. And that was a PR move at the time. So if it wasn't a PR move, they would have been fired months prior. So in a sense, we knew that Yannick wasn't upset with Umberto Ferrara. We knew that Yannick still entrusted him, and this is almost a natural progression of that.
Well, we were talking earlier about how this is where the agent this is all the agent handling a lot. Not all the agent doesn't handle all of it, but this is human resources. This is like the staff, the team, and that's how that works. And see, if the player's involved in the delivery of the services, when you're doing your training blocks and you're in the room and helping with that. But as far as the team management, there are lots of things we're not going to know about a lot of these teams in the years to come, and who's what and what's loyalty and who's providing the service, and we know who provides it, but how it works with the player managing that, and the agent and other choices. Who knows? I mean, it's very mysterious.
I have a thought. We don't get a lot from Sinner in terms of personality, peeling back the layers. He presents a very polished front, but this is indicative of who he is as a person because the prevailing one prevailing school of thought maybe would be that this was a bad PR move because this guy was associated with your suspension, but he doesn't care. It's kind of like, I'm going to hire who I want to hire. I'm the number one player in the world. Hold my beer. I really do not care. So I think that says something about him, and it's really interesting.
Agreed.
I actually had that same thought partially. At least my thing was, if Yannick's somebody who's very concerned about social media, you don't make this move. If you're in the muck, if you are, and there are players out there, like we all know, there are players reading all the comments. This to me shows definitively that Yannick is not reading all the comments, or at the very least, is not fearful of the comments because he knew that they would be coming. And you're right, Amy, he didn't care.
Well, right. Well, he's focused. Look, we know his focus is pretty darn good, and it makes you think of players like Bjorn Borg and Ivan Lendl. It's about performance and his team. Yeah, he's not. Yeah, yeah. I suspect he isn't spending time reading his social media, or if he does, it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay, I got other things to do. There's just a sense of Sinner that he has his eye on the prize. He's focused on. Pete Sampras is like that too. Pete Sampras he says, this stuff is just commentary. And this was even before social media. What social media is going to light up with all these comments about opinions about Sinners hiring people.
Absolutely, it will. Some
Yeah,
players, some players would be very, very influenced by that.
a lot of
You
players,
know,
a lot of players haven't won Wimbledon.
Novak recently had a really interesting comment about he was asked like why players are struggling so much with their mental and why several players are on antidepressants. And I believe the first thing he said was social media and
First thing
and
out of his mouth.
and how I was actually surprised. I mean, I know it because I see the players on social media like commenting on some rando's comment. But I'm surprised that he observes it quite at that level. So maybe Sinner, if he's not on social media that much, or he's got somebody handling it for him, and Alcaraz as well seems to just play it down the middle mostly.
Uh,
Um,
Carlos has talked about
does he
in
mix
numerous
it up?
interviews.
Does
He
he
does
mix it
not.
up?
He does not, but
Okay.
he reads it. He reads it, and we know he reads
Okay.
it because he's talked about comments getting to him, media narratives and buzz. And by the way, when I say media, I'm not necessarily talking about official media. I'm also talking about social media, which
Okay.
is everybody.
Okay. Well, Novak pretty much plays it down the middle on social media. I can't remember a time when occasionally what Novak will do or whoever handles the social media will do is retweet like an obscure subtweet or something like that from a fan that is very positive, and it'll surprise everybody. That's like a really good strategy to do that kind of thing in terms of like your likability and your marketing. But mainly he plays it down the middle and he
But
talks
does he
about
read
his,
it?
does
I
he
think
read it?
Novak. I think
I
Novak reads it too.
really?
I do.
Okay.
I
That
think
would
Novak.
surprise me.
I think Novak knows what everybody is saying about him. And I think I think he's in tune with what's being written about him, what's being said about him, and at times that's been obviously, at times that's been really bothersome and unpleasant for him, especially in some of the controversies that have emerged in the past where there's been a lot of unfair things written and said about him as well. So, but I feel like just judging off of how he comes off of that moments, he alludes to this stuff. He alludes to social media and to articles being written.
Okay. It's something that I don't know. I can't really speak to. But I think Sinner is on to something, just to leave it behind, leave it alone.
All right. Washington, D.C., just want a quick check in on that. Combined ATP and WTA 500. On the WTA side, Venus has been a big story. She beat Peyton Stearns in the first round, world number 35. Venus's first win in over 2 years. It had been 16 months since she'd played. Emma Raducanu is playing Naomi Osaka as well. First ever meeting between those two. Obviously, a lot of intrigue coming in given their star power. And then on the men's side, Taylor Fritz is the top seed. Francis Tiafoe, it's always so meaningful to him, as he really, I think one of the main things he's trying to accomplish in his career is to win this tournament one day. Ben Shelton is playing Gabriel Diallo. That's really interesting. Wu Yibing, very, very talented Chinese player who just can't stay healthy. He's playing Daniil Medvedev today. De Minaur, who's made a final here in the past, plays Lehechka Nakashima against Nori. So those are some of the round of 16 matchups. All the Americans are concentrated on the top half. Shelton, Tiafoe, Lerner Tien beat another top 10 player. He's 4-1 against top 10 players after he beat Rublev. So that's my DC storylines.
Mhm.
Amy, of everything going on this week, what is most interesting to you?
Well, I have to admit the Venus thing was really interesting to me. I don't know how far she'll take it. I think you mentioned, Gil, that she's been given a wild card to Cincinnati.
Hmm.
So it's it reminded me of something that you just can't take a player's age and you know not be prepared or take that for granted or whatever because she's been serving really well and you can't deny the speeds and the spins on the serve. I don't care what her age is. So that has really drawn me in. But the other on the men's side, I think Ben Shelton is really compelling right now because we're at this point where you have, the so-called new two with Sinner and Alcaraz and of course Djokovic. And who is going to contend? Who has the talent? Who has the power, the athleticism, the mental to actually give these guys a game? And on for me, Shelton is on my list. So I'm watching him very closely.
I agree. And we talk about energy, and there's the game for one. When we were talking earlier about Zverev, Zverev could borrow a page from Shelton's book about this positive life force he brings. And I know it can be a little polarizing as people think he's cocky and a little full of himself. I personally don't find that in him, but I acknowledge that others do. And then there's the game. I mean, he's willing, he wants to create things and bring points. And the disclosure, yes, I'm left-handed, so I enjoy seeing Shelton do that with the serve and forehand. I like his game more than Fritz's game, me personally, but remains the alpha among the American men. He's a great competitor and a hard worker, and is emerging as a pretty keen analyst of the game too. I'd be interested to hear him on TV in about 17 years. Um, Fritz will be, I think he'd be a great commentator. But Ben Shelton, he's really, and he's still young that you don't know where it's going to go yet. Some other guys, they reach a certain stage. This is the thing we are talking about Tsitsipas and Zverev. It's kind of like the upper division student. It's like, looks like it might just kind of go this way. Ben's still pretty young.
I'm also finding Shelton very interesting at this moment in time because if you're a Shelton optimist, you have tons of reason to be. If you're a Shelton pessimist and you don't think that he'll ever contend with the likes of Alcaraz and Sinner, you've got some arguments as well. So first of all, I think the match against Alcaraz at Roland Garros was like unbelievably positive, and that was to me the biggest moment where I've seen Shelton live up to, oh, okay, you are really actually pretty close. That said, let me give you kind of the anti arguments so that we can bounce off of them. First of all, breaking serve. Shelton among top 50 players is 47th in break rate in the last 52 weeks. Only Pechi Pericard and Hurkacz break serve less than Shelton. If you look over the years at top five players, players who have won slams, and elite players, they are not just average return players. They are usually top of the line return players. Breaking serve is what usually separates the very, very best. So that's the first thing. Second thing would be the disparity of best of five results and best of three results. The thought that on a week to week to week to week to week basis in this 11-month season, Shelton is not a consistent contender in the sense that, well, in best of three matches for his career, he's 64 and 56, 53% win rate. That's the win rate of somebody who's ranked between 20 in the world and 40 in the world. It's just okay. Best of five, now he becomes a top 10 level player because his win rate for his career is 30 and 12, 71%. You look at him making the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. Draw opened up for him, and he didn't have to beat anybody, higher than Sonego. At Roland Garros, his best win until losing to Alcaraz was Sonego, but he made the round of 16 there. So he's had a lot of instances in his career where he's taken advantage of a draw that's broken down at majors. He's had so many of these deep runs. If you look at ELO rating, take my opinion out of it. ELO rating doesn't care if it's a slam or a 250. It treats every match the same. ELO rating also cares about the level of your opponent. So if you beat 100 in the world in a fourth round match versus if you beat 8 in the world in a fourth round match, ELO rating actually takes into account how impressive the win was. Well, Shelton's ELO rating is 21 right now. His ranking is 8. I'm not surprised to see that disparity because he's making these big runs at slams, getting a ton of rankings points, but ELO doesn't care about that.
You can only beat who's put in front of you, Gill. Does Elo care about that?
No, but we're trying to answer this question. How is Ben Shelton at 8 in the world at 22 years old? Is that really a great indication of how good he is, of how threatening he is? And like, I just think there are those things that you can look at and you can say, I don't know actually if Shelton is on that track to be Sinner Alcaraz contender.
So you're
I
asking,
wasn't even thinking about his ranking. I was just giving it the gut test or the eyeball test of whether or not he can contend with these guys. Possibly. I'm not saying he will, but is he a candidate for somebody who can give these guys a game? And the reason that, I mean, you presented the counter arguments very well. But the reason that I think that he can is number one, power and athleticism. He can hang in terms of just sheer power. Number two, the lefty thing. And three, youth. And four, he's spongy. Like you give him something new to work on and he's of the mindset that he would work on that. And good coaching, actually, his dad. That's number
Mm-hmm.
five. But you're right about return. Like that's definitely a problem, and he's going to have to explore that and maybe look at what Fritz is doing because Fritz is actually making small incremental gains in that area within the last few months. So, as we were saying before in the podcast, there's many, many different ways to look at return, and I think Shelton's going to need to definitely dive into that.
this really interesting. The things I mean, what you're kind of opining, Gail, is that he's built his GPA off some easier classes that gets him to 8. But the thing that says he's 21, I guess what I want to look for now, I agree completely about the physical attributes, the thing that make him exciting when he's playing his best tennis. So now what I want to see, wow, it'd be great to see a Masters 1000 title run, or at least a couple of semis and some sustainable week in and week out results, right? Because the what 53% win percentage away from the slams is not that's not top 8. That's not top 8. You're no Andre Rublev. So and how do you do that? That's one of the things I kind of like about the Rublevs and the Ferrers, who are like they're bringing it. They're bringing it. Lots of quarters, lots of semis, titles. Right.
Yeah. And Shelton in some ways, like he brings the energy, but does he bring the discipline? Does he bring the
The
focus
game.
outside of the majors?
That
By
is
the way,
the
I left out the Australian Open. I just want to pay it off so it's a complete picture. That was a semifinal run at the start of this year, obviously. Monfils in the fourth round, who was cooked physically and
Yeah.
then had to retire. Then he got to play Sonego in a major quarterfinal. But he did beat Musetti in the third round, who is the 15 seed, and Musetti's a great win. But just overall, it's if people are looking at Shelton going basically second week at all three majors this year, and a quarterfinal, a semifinal, all this positive, but then looking at what the draw has done for him, like it is pretty significant.
well,
Yeah,
that's
but I mean, Elo, dear Elo, he didn't have the chance to play, some of these top 10 players or guys who
No,
Musetti is now top 10. But it's not his fault.
but he did though. He got the chance to play Sinner in the Wimbledon quarterfinal. He got the chance to play Sinner in
Different
the
league,
Australian Open semifinal,
different level, different league.
except in the Alcaraz match. In the Alcaraz match, it didn't look like different league, but in the two Sinner matches, it did. So
That's everybody. Everybody's
different.
got that problem.
so now we're talking about those slam losses. I'm going to recall something Jimmy Connors told me once. He said, if you play every match like it's the big match, when the big match comes, you're more ready. And I think this is the thing. This is the shadow we're wondering about Shelton. Is he gonna? Where's the Where's the Vienna title, the Shanghai title, the semis here? Again, those kind of like sustainable quality results week in, week out. Like we never felt that about David Ferrero Rublev. It's like, how this guy got in the top 8? What's this guy doing? Because you saw that he put together this body of work, and I'm kind of I'm a believer in more the tortoise than the hare. Kind of the plucking through each each week. So that we're gonna see, and we're gonna learn more about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can try to be like a Stan, and Wawrinka wasn't in the league of the big four on a week to week basis. But then once in a while, especially in his prime, 2014 through 2016, you get him in a major in a semifinal or a final against these big guns, and he not only lived with them, he gave them nightmares.
Well,
So
particularly once he got to be about 20 years old. But you don't
right.
I don't think a player can try to be anything.
No, I agree. But what I know I've had to take the Shelton pessimist stance here. Again, my thoughts on him are complicated. It's not really as simple as that. I also think he's a big time performer. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he plays great at the majors. And I 100% want that mentality in a player. And I think that if the lights are brighter and there's 50,000 people watching, no tennis stadium is that big, but if there's 50,000 versus 10 people watching, I think Shelton is going to play way better with 50,000 watching. And I think most tennis players would play better with 10 people watching. I think they'll hit better serves on the practice court when there's zero pressure. And Shelton is actually not made of that. And I think that's a good thing.
He needs to learn, though, as the people like Leighton Hewitt and these others, that it doesn't matter how many people are watching. It's just about you bringing your tennis and building the work habits that help you do that. And then at the same time, figuring out this return piece, right? And not just counting on your energy and athleticism to carry you through that late stage match at a major, but the work habits you build in your Cincinnati round of 16 matches and your Shanghais and Viennas. And that's going to be, but it makes him, I think Taylor Fritz, as just a contrast, has shown Watch how he brings it. Watch how he wins two Wimbledon grass tune-ups. Watch how he goes about a Del Rey or wins 1,000. You see this kind of body of work that he's assembled. And I think what's always exciting about a player like a Shelton, not just the style, but they're still young, and you just wonder. He might well, kind of like what's happened with TFO at times. Might well catch some big prizes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, Shelton's only 22. So, we're comparing him to players who are, like Wawrinka, who when he hit his stride, or Taylor Fritz,
that's the exception, though.
older. Taylor Fritz is making big strides later in his 20s. So I mean, I freely admit youth bias. One of the main reasons I'm excited about him is that he's only 22, and he's make I remember like a couple of years ago he hadn't even left the United States of America ever, and he's making inroads on these natural surfaces which, purportedly are not his best, but now we're approaching hard court season. So let's see what he does in Toronto and Cincinnati.
All right, US Open mixed doubles. We have 25 teams. Again, this is going to be a two-night competition week before the US Open. I don't know if I should I rattle off all the teams. Let me hit some big ones. We've got Navarro and Sinner, Anisimova and Rune, Pagula and Tommy Paul, Sabalenka Dimitrov, Raducanu and Alcaraz, probably generated more buzz than any other team. Uh, Rybakina and Fritz, Bencic and Zverev, Keys and Tiafo, Danilovic and Djokovic, Osaka and Kyrgios. Let me stop there. The wild cards are yet to be announced. Amy, you told me that is coming up, and now the U.S. Open has a decision to make about who are they going to give wild cards.
Well, you want my opinion, what I think they're going to
What
do?
do you think they're going to do? Yeah.
I think that looking at the impressive list of singles players who have entered or want entry into this, they've got a really tough decision to make because the top eight get in on combined ranking, right? Well, Djokovic, no, the great GOAT Novak Djokovic has chosen Olga Danilovic, the Serbian, to be his partner. That's going to be a low combined ranking. You got to give Djokovic a wild card. Come on. Same thing with Alcaraz. Believe it or not, a lot of these teams have a much higher combined ranking, like Navarro's center, um, Anisimova Runa, Pagula Paul. These people are probably going to be in on their combined ranking, whereas Alcaraz Raducanu will probably not. Well, you got to give Alcaraz and Raducanu a wild card. It's what everybody's been talking about. Well, you go down the list and suddenly you're starting to make some real tough decisions. So I think, unfortunately, there's only going to be two spots, maybe three, for the great doubles players who have won multiple Grand Slams and are trying to enter on the strength of their doubles. So that's what I think they're going to be thinking.
So you have
Yes.
Arani and Vavasori. They're the defending champions. Obviously, they've entered. You do have, like Siniakova and Arevalo. Like that's a great doubles team.
Yeah,
Joel, what were you
yeah,
saying?
Look, in doing this, the US Open put up chips on marquee value. I mean, this is what mixed doubles had become something not particularly significant. Not, and I don't even know how much it ever, whatever. It had be so the US, let's try this. So if we're gonna try this, if we're gonna eat what do you call it? The paleo diet? We're gonna eat the paleo diet. This is what we're eating. And so I think, yeah, you can't deny Novak and Alcaraz wild cards. That's what you want people to see. And if some other players emerge as collateral damage, that's kind of business. That's all right. And in a way, this to me gets to the whole way doubles has kind of evolved as a business entity in tennis, and what the doubles players who upset about what's happened to them at times, but what they don't do to sing for their own supper. So so this is what it's become. I think it's a one. I think I went back and forth on it initially. I thought, it's great. Try something new. Bring this on. And then once I saw that list, wow, that's really exciting.
Let me pose a question to you guys, okay? Because there's some controversial doubles teams here. First of all, Sabalenka, Dimitrov, I mean, not necessarily controversial, but they're not going to get in on combined ranking, I don't think,
Why
believe
not?
it or not. Because it's slightly Dimitrov, and remember, Dimitrov's hurt right now, so he's not going to be able to play. I know the cutoff is coming soon, but I did the math, and they're just sort of like toward the bottom, believe it or not, even though she's won in the world. Well, she's won in the world. She's a US Open champion. You got to give her like Alcaraz and Djokovic, you got to give her a wild card. So there becomes some very tough decisions. Let me ask you about this one. Osaka Curios. Do you give them a wild card over Arani and Vavasori? You like this topic now, don't you, Gil?
I mean, it's just look, I kind of agree with Joel. Like it goes back to why are we doing this? Like what was the mission statement here? And it was to make a pop. And like I really love the idea. Here's where I'm torn. I really love the idea of, can Arani and Vavasori hang, right? The defending champ. Like it's a great storyline. I hope they get a
Yes.
wild card, by the way,
Yeah,
because
me
I want to
too.
see them. I want to see them play Alcaraz Raducanu, and then you have this very distinct contrast in background, and you see who's going to win. That's awesome. So I want that, but you also need to like, you did this for a reason. You did this to make a huge commercial thing, and it's going to be. I have no doubt it's going to be. So if that's what you're doing it for, how are you turning around and then not giving a wild card to Osaka, who is a top four draw in women's tennis still right now, and Kyrgios, who is a top eight draw in men's tennis right now. I get it. I get why that is almost a cringe thing to say or hear, but it's true. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not give them?
She's a two-time US Open champion.
Who?
So Osaka,
Oh, she. I thought you meant Curious.
she. I would. The answer is I would give that to them. We cast our chips on this being about marquee.
Okay, Joel, since that was such an easy decision for
I'm going
you,
to give you
let me
another
throw
one.
out a, okay,
Give you
okay.
another one.
What about Venus Williams and Riley Opelka?
I want Venus Williams playing it. I want Venus Williams to play as much tennis as possible, as often as possible.
So you would give them the wild card over the Iranian Vavasori? Or
I'm not feeling. We're not. I'm not seeing. Yes, yes.
okay, let me throw out another one.
It's like
This
a
is
game
a
show.
team, this is a team that I think could win the whole thing. Ben Shelton and Taylor Townsend.
Love Ben Shelton and Taylor Townsend. Maybe the whole thing should be a bunch of wild cards.
They've played, by the way, Ben and Taylor have played the previous version of mixed. Like they've
Oh,
played
Ben
regular
Shelton.
mixed doubles at the US Open before.
And how did they do?
They did well. They went deep, but they didn't win. I think they lost in the semis or the final. One or the other.
So to give, if that's true and they lost to whatever team that was really good double specialist team, then to give them a wild card, it's tough call. Plus, Ben is such a great draw and Taylor is too. I mean, I love watching her
Cheers.
play.
Oh, Taylor Townsend is fantastic. Her and Ben Shelton. You're asking a left-hander how he feels about a electrifying all lefty mixed doubles team.
I
I
mean,
think.
y'all are running out of wild cards,
No,
just
of
Well,
so
course
you
we
know.
are. Of course we are. Look, we've got some romantic storylines. We've got Bolter and Demon Or. Um,
we're not in the doubles proficiency mixed doubles proficiency business. That's kind of what the USTA said when they announced it. We're not in the mixed doubles skills contest. We're opening this up. This is an elective course. I mean, that's kind of what
Well,
US
Tsitsipas and Badosa might have done everybody a favor because they withdrew from this thing when they broke up. So that's one less decision.
Yeah.
So again, 25 entries and only 16 teams will be in. And there are some decisions ahead of the USTA. Some very interesting ones. So Amy, I like that you're on this. You're ahead of it. It's going to be a big thing. It's going to be a big debate in the tennis world. So I'm glad we got ahead of it.
Some
Yeah, love it.
some will self-eliminate too because there'll be some injuries. You're seeing some withdrawals, and some I bet you some players will say, "Okay, on second thought, we don't want this after all. We're gonna gear up for the singles."
Good point.
No doubt that will happen. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate if you leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.